guys, my name is Cyan Gore and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have another exciting video for you all. I don't know what it is, but recently I feel like I just want to read some romances. So this week I'm going to be reading romance. Of course, I like to challenge myself for whatever reason, so I'm actually going to try to read 7 romances in 7 days. And we'll see how it goes. We are starting off with Ali Hazelwood's book, Not in Love. I love Ali Hazelwood's writing. I don't know what it is about it, but it does something for me every time. I am excited to read this. I did hear though that it is more erotic, which is interesting. I don't really know what to expect. I don't know if it's part of like her STEM romances or not. I guess we'll figure that out together. Okay, so I am about 50% of the way through Not in Love. In this book, we are following Rue and Eli. It is STEM-based. There are literal beakers on the cover, so that could have clued me into that beforehand. But Rue works for a biotech company, and she's basically like trying to develop a patent for a product that is like a new film for food to make its shelf life last longer. I think specifically produce. So like that's really interesting to me. You're not really seeing a lot of the science as in her other books. One night she gets on her dating app because this is kind of like what she normally does. She doesn't do serious relationships. She just does hookups. In the very beginning of the book, she goes on this dating app. She meets up with this guy planning on hooking up, but something happens and they don't end up following through with it. But then she goes to work and she realizes that the guy she almost hooked up with is actually part of another company who is trying to take over this company, or at least that's what she thinks. I kind of feel like that's not gonna end up being the case. Like I feel like there might be some misunderstanding and things that he's not allowed to tell her. I do like her character. She is kind of cold in a way, and I don't think there's any past experiences, or at least so far we haven't learned of anything that makes her that way. It's just kind of she is who she is. That's what she likes. Like she doesn't like commitment, and it's not as if, you know, and sometimes people have their heart broken and that's why they don't want commitment. But for Rue, it's nothing like that. It's just this is who she is. She kind of doesn't necessarily have the best social cues. I like that about her because I think it's different and interesting to see that in a character. And Eli, I don't know, he's just kind of there. He's not like my favorite male main character, but he definitely seems to fall first and he wants to push for more of something serious. But so far they just have like a lot of sexual tension that they're dealing with, because I think part of the fun is that they're not supposed to because they work for different companies, and that might be like the thrill of it and why there's so much sexual tension. But we will see. So far there hasn't been much smut. Like when I think erotic, I think of 50 Shades of Grey, and it's definitely not giving that kind of vibe. I do feel like there is more underneath and more depth to these characters than something like that. Don't let the erotic words scare you from going into this. I'm gonna keep reading now. Hello everyone, and good morning, Dash. Anyways, I finished Not in Love last night by Ali Hazelwood, and I really enjoyed this book. I think the connection between the two just felt a little insta-lovey, but I didn't mind it. I mean, as the story progressed, we could tell that they definitely did have, I felt like, a genuine connection. You started to learn more about the characters, and they really do have a lot in common. The thing with these two characters is, like I said, Rue is kind of just Rue. You do learn more about why they are the way that they are and how they're eager to find a connection, but they just don't really know how to go about it. Eli has been engaged in the past, but it just wasn't the right one for him. It was interesting to see someone who has made a commitment before and then someone who has never done that in her life, and how they kind of bridge that gap and work on it together. Him having to work on not moving too fast and letting her kind of set the pace, and then her also giving him what he needed while maintaining her own needs. But it definitely wasn't a bad book. I enjoyed my time reading it. Do I feel like it is a little bit forgettable? Yes, at times, but honestly, I just forget a lot, so that might just be a me issue. They're not one of my top romance couples. It's not one of my top romance books, but I still enjoyed it while I read it. I think it's sitting at like a 3.5. If you are interested in it and the story and the characters, the dynamic between them and everything, I think go ahead and give it a shot, even if you're not looking for something super spicy, because I feel like there was a whole lot more to it than just that. So it was kind of a little bit misleading the way that it was marketed, I think personally, but still not bad. Now we are moving on to our second book. This book was actually released today, so I do have to read it on my Kindle because I totally forgot this book was even coming out and I didn't pre-order it, so I have no clue when the physical copy's coming because I just ordered it today. But that is Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. I love Elsie Silver. She's like my bias. I don't think anything she writes would ever be terrible. I thoroughly enjoy her books and I always have a good time. I did read the first book in this series. It's her newest series. I read Wild Love and I gave it 4 stars, but I think that was just me being a little bit ambitious because I love her writing so much. Now going back, it's probably like a 3.5, 3.75. It was still really good, but it wasn't her best. I definitely think, even though I've only read the first book in the Rose Hill series, that the Chestnut Spring series is better. If you didn't know, all of these books are single dad romances, I believe, or single parent, I don't know, but I think I know who this one's about and I'm excited to see his story because I did love his character in the first book. So let's get to reading. I am officially 52% of the way through Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. In this book we are following Skylar and West. Skylar is a pop star, but she has been taken advantage of by her father and manager most of her career and life. So she decides to go to Rose Hill in order to work with Ford from the first book. He is a music producer in town. So she is going there to do stuff on her own. She wants to create her own album, write her own song. While she is there, there is nowhere to stay because they're still working on creating and building the recording studio and stuff. So she's going to be there for a while, not only waiting to actually start the project, but while working on it as well. She ends up staying with Rosie's brother, West. Rosie is also in the first book. So she's staying with his brother at his house because he has an extra like spare guest house. She's staying there and he also is not a single dad. I guess he is single, but he's not a single father because he has joint custody with his ex-wife. The kids so far, they're young, but they still are like old enough to talk and walk and everything. They're Emmy and Oliver, and honestly, they're quite cute. They're not annoying, which I don't really like kids in books, so that is a nice reprieve to have kids who aren't annoying. They act their age. Emmy is more like a wildfire, kind of says whatever she wants. I don't know, just like reminds me a lot of myself as a child. And then we have Oliver, who is very introverted, very quiet, only speaks to certain people who he fully trusts, but he loves comics and writing and everything, so they're both very different personalities, and I like them. I like seeing them interact with Skylar. Of course, they are just like awestruck because she's a pop star, so she does hang around a bit and spend a good bit of time with his kids and him as well. So far, I mean, it's cute. The romance is good. The spice is good. I like our characters. The only thing is, if I remember correctly, I felt like West in the first book was better with the banter. Like, there's still good banter in there, but it's just not as funny or like sarcastic as I remember him being in the first book. So I would like to get a little bit more of that from him, but so far, I don't hate it. We will just have to see, because another thing that I do not love is when music is involved in books, which is kind of weird because I do love music in real life. I'm not a psychopath like that. Like in books, no, I just don't like it. We haven't seen like a whole lot of that at all, really. So I like that from this point forward, we get a lot of lyrics, a lot of songwriting and stuff like that. It's not going to be for me. That's just a trope that I personally don't like. But as I always say, we will see what happens. Last night I was able to finish Wild Eyes by LZ Silver. I enjoyed this book. We did get a few song lyrics, which, as I've said, I don't love in books, and it did kind of make me cringe a little bit, which is no hate because I know that an actual artist does end up singing the song, and I've seen where it is on Spotify. I listened to it and I liked it that way. It's just in my head. I can't visualize it or hear it, I guess. And the first time I played the song on Spotify, I accidentally had it on 2x speed, so that was a wild ride. But this book was good. There's like some funny, cute little things, like their meet cute I really enjoyed. I liked the kids. I liked that he has a good, healthy relationship with the mother of his children, and that Skylar was kind of able to fit into that dynamic very easily. She also has a talking parrot, which is cute and funny. It says some vulgar things sometimes, but it adds humor to the book. It's just still, I felt like it wasn't the same character that I read in the first book, and I don't really know what it is. I think it does go back to, I just thought he was going to be a little bit funnier. I felt like I wasn't getting as many good vibes from him. Like, I love Theo in the Chestnut Springs series so much that I want his character in every single mail that she writes, but that doesn't always happen. Anyways, it was still a good time. I enjoyed it. I read it so fast. It was so easy to read, but I think it's sitting at like a 3.5. I liked it like a smidge bit better than the first one, but yeah, those are my thoughts on that one. Also, I come from a very small town in Georgia, Homer, Georgia. Have you ever heard of it? Exactly. And like, I am just wondering, imagine living in a small town. Like, are small towns in Canada really like that, where everyone is just beautiful? Because when I think of my small town, I think of people who are missing teeth, the fact that we have a lot of crackheads. Where are the crackheads, Elsie? Do they just not exist in Canada? If there was a small town book based in Georgia, you would have crackheads, people with no teeth, people who accidentally date their cousins and don't realize that they're cousins until later on, you know? Stuff like that. You would have some drama. It'd be kind of good, actually. Maybe I should write a small town Georgia romance. Anyways, though, we are moving on to our third book of the video, and I actually decided that I want to read The Love of My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. I think this may be a debut novel. I've heard good things about it. I literally picked this up because I feel like I have seen it in every single person's wrap up this month, and no one's had a bad thing to say about it, so I want to see what it's all about. I feel like I'm missing out. I think our main character dies and there's like a romance there, so we'll have to see how it plays out. I am already 50% of the way through The Love of My Afterlife. In this book, we are following Delphi. Delphi does pass away in the very beginning of the book. She goes on to the afterlife, and she's basically in like the waiting room trying to meet her grief counselor, who is someone who helps them process the information that they are now dead and kind of figure out their new lives. Or afterlives, I guess. And her name is Merritt. Merritt is like spunky, funny. I kind of really like her character, actually. While she is there talking to Merritt, she starts to freak out. She leaves the room and she bumps into a new transfer named Jonah, someone who just passed away. And when they first meet, they have like this instant spark, right? Like soulmate kind of thing going on. But then Merritt comes in and she's like, oh my gosh, this is actually a huge mistake. You're not supposed to be here, Jonah. You are very much alive. So she sends him back to the real world, and Delphi is so distraught because she's like, oh my god, that was literally my soulmate. What are you doing? So Merritt gives her 10 days to go back down to Earth. If she can get Jonah to kiss her within those 10 days of his own free will, then she won't be dead. Now we are just following Delphi along on this journey as she's trying to find Jonah. Right now though, it feels like a wild goose chase because it seems like every time she's this close to finding where he's at, he like just left. It's very interesting. She is involving the help of other people that she meets along the way, as well as her neighbor, Cooper, who they don't really get along, don't really like each other, so it's interesting to see where that's gonna go. I feel like there's definitely gonna be a bigger moral to the story, and it might become something else completely. Like, I don't think it's just a romance. I think there's going to be a lot of underlying themes, and I'm kind of excited to see it. I think it's cute, and some of the characters she has bumped into along the way, I really enjoy. I'm gonna keep reading though. Okay, so I literally finished this book in one sitting. This was just too good. I now understand the hype around it completely. It's more than just a romance in my opinion. When Delphi first passes away, she's kind of like a lone wolf. She doesn't really have many friends, like none actually. Even as she's making this journey trying to find Jonah, she has problems letting people in, and you kind of see why. You understand that she had some friendship trauma from her past, but along the way she does realize that not everyone is like that. She's allowed to become vulnerable and open herself up to meeting new people, and she definitely does that, not just for herself but for another character in here, Mr. Yoon. He is an older gentleman who really has no one to look after him anymore, and she has been going to see him. He is nonverbal, so they kind of have to communicate very sparsely, but she's been going to see him to help take care of him. And so you see like her bringing together all these people and helping them to also make new friends and to just be there for each other. And I thought it was really done well. I also like the romance in here. The only real complaint that I do have is that there is like a micro trope that I don't necessarily love in romances, and it's towards the very end of the book. So if you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. I feel like it just drags things out, but I still really enjoyed this book. It almost gave me 5-star feelings, but not quite, so I am gonna give it like a 4.5. I think it was good. I understand the hype, and I think if you want, you should pick it up. But that's it for me. It's literally only 7 p.m., but I've got things to do, so I will see you guys tomorrow for our next book. Good morning, everyone. It is time to pick out our next book, and I decided to go with, what is this? Juniper Hill. This is part of the Eden series. I did read the first one last month, and while I liked it, it wasn't one of my favorite romances, but for some reason, I'm just so intrigued about this series and I do want to continue it, so I did get the second book. I don't know who this is about or anything. All I know is that if it continues on as the first one did, it's a small town, Quincy, Montana. The Edens are very well known. Their family like basically started this town. They own like almost any type of business that you can think of within the town, and that's about it. There's like 6 children in this family. But I have the second one. I'm going to start it now. The first one did have a little bit of like a mystery element to it. So I just, for some reason in my mind, told myself that all of them are. And I don't even know if that holds any semblance of truth to it whatsoever. I'm just assuming it does. And I kind of like that about these, or at least the first one. So we'll see what happens in this one. Okay, so I'm 50% of the way through Juniper Hill. In this book, we are following Memphis and Knox. Memphis is a single mother because she left her life behind. She's originally from New York. She comes from a very wealthy family, but she packed up her bags and took her child and basically nothing else with her to start over in Quincy, Montana. She got a job working at the hotel there, and as most hotels do, there's a restaurant connected to it called Knuckles, and Knox is the owner slash head chef at this restaurant. So she's working at the hotel as housekeeping, and they're always running into each other, having these interactions, not to mention the fact that she needs a place to stay for a bit, so she's staying in his guest house. The baby's like really young. It's literally like only 2 months old, so once again, it's a book that doesn't have an annoying child in it, which is always a plus, but the romance does feel a little bit insta-lovey, which I kind of knew that going into it because of the way the first one played out for me. But in this one, I feel like it's a little bit better. It's like more tame than the first one. In the first one, it felt very lustful, but in this one it does, but there's also a mix of them actually having interactions, actually talking to one another, and kind of getting to know each other better. There is one thing in here though that I just thought was like, it was a choice, a weird one, but it was a choice, and it is that the author makes it seem as if Knox lost a child, as in the child passed. He literally says at one point, I cannot lose another kid. And to me, like, that screams that, you know, the kid passed away or something, but that's not the case at all. It just had me thinking, like, if I was someone who actually did lose a child, that might be something that was like triggering for me. And it was also just weird because, like, why would you word it that way? Are you trying to add suspense? And if you are, it didn't need to be done like that. Besides that, there isn't really a mystery in here so far, nothing like like that's been going on, which I kind of thought that maybe it was in my brain that they all had some kind of mystery in it, because I also couldn't think about, well, what else is there? In the first book of the series, there was a murder. This town just can't keep experiencing murders, you know what I mean? So it's not like every single book is gonna have that, but I mean, we will see. I guess you could consider the mystery of why did Memphis run away, who is the father of her kid, because she hasn't really mentioned it yet, because that is something that she did try to hide from pretty much everyone there. She didn't want them to know who the dad was, so I guess that's like the mystery. I don't know if you can count it, but yeah, I didn't have like the highest hopes going into it, but I still am enjoying it. I think it is doing it a little bit more for me compared to the first one, but it's just the trope, you know, because the first one was like friends with benefits, and that's never really my favorite thing to read about. So anyways, let's keep going. Last night I was able to finish Juniper Hill. I feel like this book, it was okay. I feel like that's just how it's been with the first and this book. I just have this feeling that the entire series is going to be okay. I think all of them are probably going to move at kind of a faster pace than I prefer, but for some reason I still like really want to continue the series. I don't know what it is. I think it's just if I want a small town romance that I think is going to be interesting enough to keep my attention, but I don't know what to read, I'm going to continue on with the series and pick up the other books in it, because like I understand the writing's not the greatest, the story's not the greatest, but for some reason I still like reading them. This one I think I'm gonna give like a 3.5. There's like a little bit of a crime slash mystery thing that happens, but it's at the very end of the book, so it definitely wasn't like one of the forefront plots like it was in the first book, but I still liked it. I do just think that, I mean, if this was real life, this couple would definitely get a divorce in the future. I wasn't expecting a heartfelt, beautiful romance with an amazing connection between the two, so it did exactly what it needed to do for me. That's that one. I really don't have any other thoughts except that for some reason I like this series even though I know that they're not that great, you know? Anyways, moving on. I did pick out my read for today. Could you not? And for my next read, I'm going to pick out Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This is going to be my first book by this author. All I know is that it is like an accidental pregnancy trope, but people have really loved this book. I don't know why I feel like I've read a lot of books with children. I mean, this will be my third in this video, but yeah, we're reading it. I don't know what to expect, but I'm hoping I love it just as much as everyone else. I'm 50% of the way through. We are following Bo and Win. They meet and have a one-night stand, and then she gets pregnant. So now we are just following them along as they deal with this. One thing that they do have in common is that Bo has a prosthetic leg, and Win has, I don't think she mentioned like a medical term for it, but Win has a smaller, not fully grown hand. So that's something that they bonded on, is like the way that can make everyday tasks a little bit more difficult for them, and also the way that other people treat them because of their disabilities and stuff. So they're trying to figure this out together, the whole pregnancy thing. Throughout this book, Baby's Not Born, you are just getting their story throughout her pregnancy and how they're getting ready to become parents. During the whole process, Win ends up moving in with Bo because she kind of works like a low-paying job and doesn't have a great place, and he wants the best for this baby, so he moves her into his really nice house. He makes a lot more money than her. He is super nerdy, but in like a cute, endearing way, and I love the banter between the two. They are just so sweet and wholesome, and so far it's really good. I think even if you don't like the pregnancy trope, you would like this book because it is just like, yeah, they're doing things because she's pregnant and they're getting ready for that, but I feel like the pregnancy isn't overdone. Like, it's not the main thing going on. I feel like there's just other little instances of them doing things together, and the pregnancy isn't even mentioned, if that makes sense. So it makes it feel more natural. They are like getting to know one another, and I just like it a lot. I think I mostly also like their friend group. Her best friend Sarah is just like everything to me. I absolutely love her personality, and even between Wynn and Sarah, like, they have top tier banter. Just everyone together is so much fun. Like Sarah, for example, when Wynn first finds out that she's pregnant, she just texts her and is like, I need you here, and Sarah gets up, doesn't matter what she's doing, and immediately goes to Wynn because her friend needs her. And then there is when Wynn first moves into the house, Beau's not actually there yet, so she goes snooping through everything, which is literally, that's something all of us, I fear, would do. I'm excited to keep reading. I don't want to put it down, and I definitely feel like this is gonna be a one sitting book. Like, I'm just plowing through it at this point. As predicted, I ran through this book because it was so good. I love a good romance that just makes you giggle, and when you read it, you literally think like, wow, I personally don't want kids, but if I did, I would want to be treated like this during my pregnancy. I just loved everything about this book. I think that the friend group really did it for me. I think I already mentioned that, but I just loved their dynamic so much. I think everything was so sweet and wholesome, which I also think I've said a million times. You could just really see, even though there's a hookup in the very beginning, which, by the way, you do get to actually see their one night stand in the very beginning, and in a lot of books, the author will choose to skip over that. They don't actually include the smut until later on. That way they can build that foundation, and it just means more when they finally do hook up again. But in this one, you're thrown right into their hookup. Honestly, I could feel a connection from the moment that they met. It's just too good. I don't know how she did that, because normally that's not the case for me. And of course, as she's pregnant, they're in separate rooms living as roommates, but you can tell that they're just skittering around the topic of them actually wanting to be together or just co-parent, which is very responsible, by the way. You don't have to like be in a relationship with the father of your child if you guys barely even know each other. So it was great to see them like get to know one another, and I think their dynamic just works really well with each other. It was so good. If you've read this book, one of my favorite scenes has to be the Dungeons and Dragons scene. It was so funny, you guys. It's just a wow book. I will say towards the end I got a little bored. It's more people driven. There's not a lot of stuff happening in here. The epilogue and stuff happened and the kid was actually born. I was like, ugh, this isn't as much fun anymore. So for that, and because I didn't get 5-star feelings, I think I'm gonna settle with a 4.5. It's not quite there, but I'm telling you, it was so close. That's just me maybe being a little bit picky, but it's my ratings. I get to do what I want. But that is that one. I don't know what I'm gonna read next, but that will be a decision for tomorrow, Cyan, to make. So I will see you guys in the morning with our next read. Good morning. It is time for our next read, and I decided to pick out Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. I know there's still sticker residue on there, but that's a task for another day. I feel like I've picked this up like a million times, and every time I tell myself that I'm gonna take this sticker off, and then I never do. It'll probably still be there by the time I do my wrap up for this month, but whatever. At least the thought is there. I just haven't taken action. But anyways, I don't know what compelled me to pick this book up. It's just an ice hockey and figure skater romance. I know nothing about it. I just saw it and I was like, you know what? That's the one. Hello. So yesterday I only actually got like a little over halfway through Unsteady, which means I'm a little bit behind on 7 books in 7 days, but I think I can finish this and our next read today. So those are my hopes. Let me talk about this one though. In this one, we are following Reese, like Resand, but it's not Resand. It's just spelled like that, you know? Obviously, it's a hockey romance. It's not going to be Resand from Akatar. Anyways, we're following him and Sadie. Sadie is an ice skater. She has a pretty bad home life. Her father is an alcoholic. Her mother left them when she was really young, and she has 2 younger brothers who she's basically raising and taking care of. They're pretty young, I think like 9 and 6 or something like that. I don't know. One of them, he was old enough to realize what's going on in the house, so like he is a little bit more guarded and doesn't really trust a lot of people and is just hurt. And then the other one's a little bit too young to understand any of that, so she's dealing with that as well as being a college student, working really hard with her ice skating, and also having like I think 2 part-time jobs or something like that. So it's a lot for her to handle, and she is very angry. I kind of like that in a character. She's like spicy because she's so angry, but she knows how to give it as much as she can take it. And her and Reese's banter is really good. Reese, on the other hand, is a hockey player. He, in the very beginning of this book, gets injured. So now he's dealing with moving past that. But he comes from the opposite side where he has very rich, pretty loving parents. His dad stresses him out a little bit because his dad was a professional hockey player. So he just feels that stress of having to be just as good as his father. But it seems like his dad's not too terrible or anything. But his mom and dad are just so different than what Sadie's used to. They kind of start off on the wrong foot when they first meet, but you can definitely feel the tension between the two. They both are like sharing the hockey rink before it even opens to get in extra practice. Eventually over time they just start to bond. They bond over music because she says that it helps her when she's feeling anxious, and she shares her music with him, which I kind of like. I don't know, I like the music when it's done like this, like these are real songs. I don't like made up lyrics, you know? So I think that's cute that that's something they're bonding over. It reminds me of like when my husband and I first met. I told him like just in regular conversation what type of music I liked, and that night he sent me a playlist, and I just love that trope. I think it's cute when someone takes the time to do that in a book. Also, you know, they're pretty attracted to each other, so they do start off as friends with benefits, which is not normally my favorite trope ever, but I think it's done really well in this book because you are getting spice scenes. The placement of them, it's like spread out, so it doesn't feel like you're going smut, smut, smut. It's just kind of there every once in a while. And at the same time, even though they're friends with benefits, like you can tell this man Reese is so madly in love with her, but he's just kind of like willing to do whatever she wants until she realizes that he's in love with her. He's gonna let her set the pace. She just has never really been in a relationship. She kind of uses her hookups as a way for release for all that anger and buildup and stress that she feels, and I really like the dynamic. Reese is definitely the golden retriever. She's the black cat. I think that's like my favorite, and I'm really enjoying it, so I'm gonna keep reading and see what happens because we need to finish this up today. I'm done with Unsteady, and I really enjoyed this book. I didn't know what to expect going into it, but I really loved our characters. Did Sadie really piss me off sometimes with the things that she would do and say? And in my head, I'm just like, Reese does not deserve this. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, everything just worked out perfectly fine. Of course, it's a romance. There's a happy ending, but I felt like their connection was so genuine. She felt like she raised these 2 boys. It was hard for her to lean and depend on someone. He was open and willing to let her, and honestly he just kind of worshipped the ground that this girl walked on, and I kind of loved that. It was so sweet, so good. I highly recommend this book. I think I'm gonna give it like a 4-star though, because it did feel a little bored at times and similar. Like there's not much going on because it's a romance, so it does feel more people driven. One of the plot points felt like Binding 13, and it also kind of felt really similar to a mix of like Icebreaker and The Deal. I don't want to make that comparison because it could be simply just because all 3 of these books have hockey in them and because they're college based, but it just did feel similar to that because you had the parties going on, you had them at the ice rinks, you had an injury, them dealing with their families, and it just felt familiar. you know, like stuff I've seen before, which I know. I don't really love to compare. And I read The Deal and Icebreaker and even Binding 13 now, what kind of feels like forever ago. So I might not be able to really compare them. They might be really different. I just can't remember. But for some reason while I was reading this, it did kind of drag out at some points and I was like, this feels like I've read it before. It's still really, really good. I highly recommend it. In fact, I actually went to go see if there's a second book in the series because it really does allude to who another book could be about, and there is, but it's not out yet. And that was very disappointing to me, so I think that really speaks to how good this book is, because especially when it comes to romances, I might read a whole romance series, but not typically back to back to back, but I really wanted to go ahead and read the second book. So that speaks volumes as well. But now we have our final book for the video, and this is actually going to be a Kindle read because I have been seeing this book absolutely everywhere, but it is fully sold out. And I mean, we're getting closer to fall, so I just feel like I need to read this. I don't want to miss out because everyone is reading it, and it is Pumpkin Spice Cafe by something Gilmore. I don't remember the author's name. It's on sale for 99 cents, so I went ahead and bought it on my Kindle, and I'm gonna give it a shot because literally everyone's reading it and they're comparing it to Gilmore Girls. Now, when that show was like in its prime, I was way too young. My sister was watching it, but we have a 7-year age gap, so keep in mind she was a teenager. I was probably like 8 or 9 watching this with her, acting like I knew what the heck was happening, and I didn't. And I've never rewatched it as an adult, so maybe I need to. Let me know if I should watch Gilmore Girls for the first time fully ever. One thing though is that I can vividly in my mind picture the town, the gazebo, that one character's face just haunts my nightmares. So I guess I could kind of make a comparison, but not really. We'll see. Maybe this book will make me want to watch Gilmore Girls. We shall see. This book is really short. I'm literally already 50% of the way through it, and it's only been a couple of hours. In the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, we are following Jeannie. She is going to be the new owner of her grandmother's cafe after moving away from Boston to this small town. I already forgot where this town is located, but it's a very small, close-knit community. And when she gets there, she's kind of struggling a little bit because she thinks that something is going on with the cafe. Maybe it's haunted. Maybe there's someone wanting to ruin it so that she doesn't take over anymore. She doesn't really know yet, but she's trying to figure it out. And when she first arrives, she ends up having a meet cute with Logan. He is the local farmer's son. He works on a farm and he delivers the produce to her cafe, and pumpkin or gourds, is that the word they used? Didn't know that was a thing. They're pumpkins in my eyes, but he delivers it there and that's how they meet each other. And originally there's off the bat this connection between them. It's very much physical, but you can tell that they like each other. The thing is that I guess Logan is weary of starting something up because he doesn't want the whole town to be talking about him, especially because the whole town talked about his last relationship and how that one kind of blew up in his face. So he's weary about starting something. She's also weary because, I don't know, she just wants something casual, I guess, but they can both definitely feel the tension between them, and so they agree to see each other in private, but it's really just them making out. I feel like they're not having that many conversations. It's going by so quick. I do like the town and the atmosphere of the book, especially there's these town meetings and a few kooks in the town, and it definitely does remind me of Gilmore Girls with the town meetings, because that's something I also remember from that show, is the town meetings and how crazy that would get and how people would just complain over the tiniest things. So that's funny. There are some good funny people in this book, but it's not anything out of this world, and so far I'm not really understanding the hype around it. I think number one, it has a great cover, and number two, people are just so ready for the fall season and the fall books, so maybe that's why it's so hyped up, or maybe it will get better. It's just for now, I don't really care that much. Okay, everyone, I finished our final book for the video. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but we read 7 freaking books this week. I'm glad I finished the last one. I'm glad I only paid 99 cents for this book, and I'm glad I didn't go out of my way to buy a physical copy or spend the money on one because this book was not great. The romance went way too fast. There was a huge miscommunication trope in it. The main character, Jeannie, she wanted them to be a public relationship. The second he held her hand in public, she was like, I don't think this is what I want. Excuse me, that honestly kind of pissed me off. And the fact that they were already like, after a month, like, oh, I'm so in love with you. Are you kidding me? No, I didn't like it at all. I liked the atmosphere and like the townspeople, and you know, they had like a fall festival and stuff like this, but the book overall was just not great. I am thoroughly confused as to why it's so popular that it's literally sold out. No hate to the author or anything. If this is something that you want, just something that is purely vibes, it's gonna be easy to read and it's short and sweet and simple, I'd recommend it, but it's not a book for me. I think I'm gonna have to give it like 2.5. It wasn't absolutely terrible, but there was no substance to it and I was just getting mad. Those are my thoughts on that one. Let's do the quickest roundup ever. I don't even remember what I rated half of these books, but the first one I read was Not in Love. This one was a pretty decent romance book, way different than I expected. I think I gave it like, what, a 3.5 or something. Then I read Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This one's another one that's like maybe 3.5, 3.75. It was really good. It's just I expected a little bit more from our main male character, and our main female character was just kind of there, but the plot was good. There's like some drama that unfolds. I loved the children in this book, and it was cute. Then I read The Love of My Afterlife. This book was so good. I'm still thinking about it to this day. It did slow down for me a little bit, but honestly, that just happens in a lot of books. Overall though, I had a really good time while reading it. So this one's like a 4.5. Then I read Juniper Hill. This one is absolutely nothing special, but I just like this series so much whenever I want something quick and easy to read. I think I had fun reading it. So it's like, what, 3.5? And then I read Out on a Limb. This is another one that is so good, so cute and wholesome. We'll recommend this forever. We really want to read more from Hannah Bonham Young now. I just think it was very well done when you can take a trope that not everyone loves and make it lovable. 4.5. Then I read Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. This is another one that's like a 4-star read for me. Another trope that I don't love, which is friends with benefits, but she turned it around to where I adored this couple and I was rooting for them the whole time. And yeah, our main female character pissed me off a good bit, but it was still really good in my opinion. Another 4. And then the last book we just talked about, The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Very disappointing, 2.5 stars. But that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys thought if you read any of these books. Give me recommendations if you have any, and I'm gonna go to bed now. So I will see you guys in my next video. I hope you all have a great reading week and just a great week in general, and I'll see you next time. Bye!